So our next panel is our Crypto Task Force Roundtable. Not exactly the shape of a round table, but close enough. This is the mini West Coast edition. I'll explain that in a minute. Let me introduce our moderator first, Nick Morgan. Nick is the founder and president of Investors Choice Advocates Network, or ICAN, and he's based in LA. And through ICAN, Nick serves as a legal advocate for small investors and entrepreneurs who are fighting overreach by the SEC. He previously served for 7 years as a senior trial counsel in the SEC's Division of Enforcement himself, and also in private practice for 18 years as a securities enforcement defense trial lawyer. Nick, thanks for moderating. Welcome. Next to Nick is Teresa Goody Guillen. She is a partner at BakerHostetler, and she's based in DC and San Francisco. Teresa is the leader of Baker's Digital and Innovative Markets team and a co-leader of the Web3 and Digital Assets team. She's nationally recognized as a leader in the crypto and securities enforcement space, and she previously served as an attorney in the SEC's Office of General Counsel. Finally, rounding out this panel, we have John Stark, president of John Reed Stark Consulting. John and I have been close friends for about 30 years now, since our time together in the SEC's Enforcement Division. John served for 18 years at the SEC, including 11 as the founder and the chief of the SEC's Office of Internet Enforcement. His experience also includes 5 years as a DC office head at Strauss Friedberg, and now as president of John Reed Stark Consulting. Anybody who follows the space probably knows he's written hundreds of articles on the subject of crypto and cyber, and is really the perfect person to round out today's panel. One more thing, the reason that we're calling this a mini West Coast edition of the Crypto Task Force Roundtable is because both John and Teresa were among the 11 people selected by SEC Commissioner Hester Peirce for the SEC Crypto Task Force Roundtable, which was the inaugural roundtable in a series that was held on March 21st at SEC headquarters in DC. So we're very pleased to bring 2/11ths of that roundtable to Los Angeles today for a discussion about crypto regulation. Nick, let me turn it over to you.
Thanks, Bruce. And you picked the right 2 of the 11 panelists. We're fortunate enough to have 2 of the most articulate and outspoken speakers on the issue of SEC regulation over crypto, each bringing a slightly different perspective to the topic, which hopefully will come out today. So the fact that there was and is a series of crypto regulatory roundtables at the SEC is an indication of what a stark difference there appears to be between the current SEC and the SEC of the prior administration. A roundtable like that would have been unthinkable. So I think this is a healthy continuation of that dialogue. Thank you, John and Teresa, for being a part of this. I want to start with one of the biggest differences that was pretty quick in coming, which is Corp Fin's recent letter on meme coins. And I'm not so interested in the bullets and details of that, but the fact that it happened. There was a time for the last, probably since the Dow report came out in 2017, when people were clamoring to get the SEC's view on the limits of its jurisdiction, and that just wasn't coming. And now we've got this Corp Fin statement on meme coins. You both have different views on the SEC's role here in this topic. You both touched on, in your comments during the roundtable, how the SEC should treat things like meme coins, trading cards, Pokemon cards, that sort of thing. Teresa, John's view, and I'll let John speak for himself, but in general, I think John's view is that this presents a poor pivot around an issue that's really kind of trivial. Is that right? Is the meme coin Corp Fin letter poorly thought out pivot on something that nobody really cares about?
I respectfully, every time I disagree with John, it's always respectfully.
Absolutely.
But I think that was important for the SEC to do because meme coins had been getting so much coverage and people were talking about them so much, and it's so, in my view, my securities analysis, it's so clearly not a security. And so I think it was important to bring clarity to the market and as quickly as possible. So the marketplace was, pushed out over to foreign jurisdictions, offshore. People weren't able to innovate. Everybody was kind of scared. And so what do you do when you're coming in? Well, first you stop bad policy, and then you implement good policy. And so I think that's what we see the SEC doing. And the SEC commissioners could only do so much before Chairman Atkins came in because they don't want to get ahead. And so I think it's very important, and I saw that as a very responsible action to start bringing clarity where they could and in an efficient way. And I think that's exactly what that guidance did. And it shows that unlike the no action letters that people had tried to get, where it was concerning that those required no action letters because they were so clearly not securities. And that the same thing here, that, the SEC is putting out guidance, and I think it's responsible, and it's good that they're doing it, and they did it on their own, and they didn't make people come and talk to them for 3 years, and to put out a no action letter that's basically a security, a non-security is not a security.
Right, and it is, am I right, a fundamental change in that it is a recognition, at least by the staff in CorpFin, that there are limits to the SEC's jurisdiction over digital assets. Is that a new thing for us to be experiencing?
Yes, and the recognition within the commission with the rest of the world, including Congress and the CFTC and everybody else, that there is uncertainty here. And so the way to clarify is not to put your head in the ground and pretend like there isn't anything that's unclear. It's to keep your head out like everybody else and try and bring clarity.
John, you've had some thoughts about meme coins and whether they're useful technology. What do you think about this?
It's the fourth industrial revolution.
That's right.
And thanks, Nick. Thanks, Teresa. Thanks, Bruce, for another amazing enforcement. I've been working with Bruce on some of these for the last at least 10 years. It's really unbelievable to see what he's done out here. And Nick, what you do is amazing. And we love you out in the SEC world, I think, generally because your spirit of public service is unbelievable. And so thanks for that. And Teresa, I would have been all over supporting you for chairman or chair. And I think you're terrific also. We happen to disagree in that space, but we always disagree without being disagreeable. So yes, I disagree 100%. Well, first of all, you say that the SEC was limited in what they could do before Chair Atkins came along. I don't know if I agree with that. They demolished, and I don't know if that's a strong enough word, the enforcement program related to crypto. They stopped it completely. They closed all the investigations. They stopped all the litigation or paused it all. They withdrew all the appeals, and then they took the crypto unit and they just disappeared it, recalibrated with a new name, the cyber unit, and they took the guy who was in charge of it and put him over in OIT. And I look out in the audience and I know a bunch of you and I see so many great trial lawyers from the SEC. And I think of imagine if they did that to you. If they just said, okay, sorry, you've been winning all your cases, you got to go to OIT and fix printers. But turning to the question of meme coins and otherwise, just go back 8 years, Jay Clayton becomes SEC chair, right? He's the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York now. And initial coin offerings start happening ad nauseum. That's when I started writing about this in about 2017. So all these initial coin offerings are happening, and Jay Clayton starts bringing case after case after case and winning and winning and winning, even temporary restraining orders, even emergency Section 5 actions like the one against Telegram that didn't involve fraud. So a TRO that didn't involve fraud but involved a $2 billion offering at Telegram. He's bringing these cases like crazy. He testifies in front of Congress, and he says the following: I have never seen an initial coin offering that isn't a security, period, end of story. That's a quote from his testimony. So that went on and he brought maybe close to 100 or so enforcement actions relating to crypto. SEC's winning all of them, and including the Ripple case, which he brought on his last day. Then Chair Gensler comes in, and the SEC starts bringing more cases, right? lending programs, simple agreements for future tokens, staking programs. They go to court every time and time again. The SEC just keeps winning and winning and winning. It's the most winning enforcement program in the history of enforcement. We all know that that's
true.
Okay, except Teresa. So they're winning like crazy in all these cases. And then President Trump gets elected. So these big crypto companies say, we're losing in court like crazy, but why don't we change things? Let's change the venue. So they start spending all this money, and all these new people get elected, and that was then, this is now. The SEC wakes up one morning, and everything is over with respect to crypto. Period. Full stop. And the SEC has never done that kind of about face. All the cases that they withdrew, Binance, Coinbase, on and on and on, one after the other. If you read any of my posts on LinkedIn, I couldn't keep up with it because they were withdrawing them. And they were winning these cases.
Not true.
Let me finish. Right. So here's the point.
So many things here, so many. I don't even know where to start.
What the SEC decided, that was in the South, they decided crypto, it's not an investment, it's a collectible. It's a collectible. Now,
some are.
Let me tell you why crypto is not a collectible. Okay. Number one, I'll give you 3 very quick reasons, and then I'll turn it over. 3 very quick reasons. Number one, okay, I have been speaking out against this. I don't have any crypto clients. I voted Republican most of my life. I don't have anything fintech related in my life. I'm completely objective. I'm teaching securities regulation. What is she doing? For 20 years at Georgetown and Duke Law School. I've been involved with technology. I was special counsel for internet projects in 1994 to 98, and then chief until 2009. So I've been involved in the juxtaposition of business law and technology my entire career, and a lot of you know me here. So here are my 3 quick reasons. The first reason is whenever I get out there and say anything negative about crypto, okay, my family is threatened. They threaten to burn my house down. They threaten to kill my family, kill me. And that's on Twitter. I get voicemails. I get all kinds of threats. If I were talking about Pokemon cards and Beanie Babies, I don't think I'd be receiving those kinds of threats. So that's reason number 1. Reason number 2, if you go to a broker-dealer these days, say Robinhood, right? And you go in there and you click the tab Invest. And there's stocks, bonds, options, derivatives, whatever, and crypto. There's not Beanie Babies and collectibles and American Girl dolls and Pokemon cards in that tab. That's the second reason. Third reason, which I think is overwhelming and most compelling, is all of the decisions. I wrote 89 pages of single-spaced testimony for the Roundtable and also before Congress. And I go over all these cases over and over again. And every single one of them says digital assets are a security. It takes the totality of those economic reality of the transaction. And the SEC, look, I have to say this. The SEC can't disappear these Article 3 judges.
John, you're running out of time.
Okay. Yeah,
Nick Morgan can disappear Article 1 judges like he did, but not Article 3.
I want to give Teresa.
There is so much to unpack. I didn't bring my pen.
Before you unpack it, and I do want you to unpack it, John, we were talking about the meme coin CorpFin no action letter, and obviously it brings up
Let Teresa respond first.
What I wanted to say was there was a great level of frustration about the inability or the unwillingness of the SEC to recognize the limits of its jurisdiction. Forget about the cases. Hold on a second. And it was crystallized, I think, by when Chair Gensler went in front of Congress and was testifying to Congressman Ritchie, who asked him, is a Yankees ticket, is a Pokemon card a security? And Chair Gensler wouldn't answer the question.
A meme coin is just an initial coin offering.
Well,
no, it's
okay,
not.
Teresa.
Oh my gosh.
Teresa, respond. What are your thoughts on John's comment? And we're going to get to the cases in a minute, so maybe leave a little bit of that for round 2.
Okay, so first let's just put the put this in context that this is the 4th industrial revolution that occurs over decades of time, and if you don't understand that now, you've got a lot to catch up on, and you're kind of missing out on what is happening. This is a whole new way of distributing business resources, a new type of business form. Our financial systems are moving towards this. The type, it's like saying I want to stick with my fax machine and I refuse to use email, or I will only use the internet as a library, and that's it. I'm not actually going to use it for any functionality. And so, just setting it out, and before, anybody rolls their eyes, oh my gosh, you need to actually understand the technology and what its capabilities are before you start judging it and saying whether it is or not. If you haven't owned crypto, if you haven't ever gotten on a DLT, a digital ledger, a distributed ledger technology platform, then I don't know how you're opining. So I think it's very important to really understand what it is before you start judging it, because it is really changing the way that we do everything in a much more efficient way, in a way that's immutable, that's auditable, that can be centralized or decentralized. The scalability is enormous. The amount, like just what this can do is so important that I really encourage everybody just to, pick up Blockchain for Dummies or something, like just read about what it can do and all the use cases. And then going into, the SEC and the enforcement cases, to me, a settlement is not a win. That is the government, forcing somebody and they can't really fight. So if you tell me, oh, they're winning all these cases, settling a case is not a win to me. When somebody actually had the over $10 million to go fight the SEC, they certainly didn't win. Ripple did not win. They actually lost a lot of things. And so, I think when there's not clarity, when everybody is saying, we don't know whether or not these are securities, because for the SEC to exercise jurisdiction, there has to be a security. If not, then that is wire fraud or that's the DOJ. If it deals with a commodity, you're taking somebody else's jurisdiction who is probably better suited to do that. And so it's not just, oh, the SEC is going to do this. No, you're taking from somebody else who's better situated to do that. So I think it's important to realize and recognize that jurisdictional limit. And then when you have Congress saying, hey, let's figure out what's a security and what's not, and the same thing with the CFTC, and then you have in mango markets, for example, you have the CFTC bringing in an enforcement action saying this is a commodity. The SEC says it's a security, and then the DOJ says it's a commodity and fraud. And so you have 3 different actions, all bringing an enforcement action over the same asset, calling it different things. If there's that kind of confusion, how would everybody else in the world, people who are trying to issue these things, have any idea how to treat it? They wouldn't. If the government can't even agree, how are we supposed to expect the public to agree? And that's completely irresponsible on the behalf of government. And then to boot, not only do we do that, we go full lawfare against them. Kill this industry, right? Everybody bring actions against them. And go after them like you never have before. Bring cases and go after billions and billions of dollars that you never have. Bring in the executives, people who have never ever been gone before a court and been brought into the SEC or the DOJ or FinCEN or OFAC or all of these different things. Why? The same financial institutions were violating this, or allegedly violating the same laws. These are for the same things. Yet somehow we think we should go after them full force and try and put them out of business, bring in their executives, all this treatment. And then, Gary Gensler goes into Congress and says, I don't have a statutory authority for exchanges. It just doesn't exist. You need to change the law. And then go and behold, no law changes, and all of a sudden he found it, right? And then he started bringing actions against all of them. These big wins, and so then a responsible SEC chairman comes in, or rather an irresponsible one leaves, and in the interim, you have the responsible commissioner saying, this is not fair. The government is not supposed to go and attack people like this. And so they start looking at all of the cases. Are they supposed to just let this lawfare go? No, they've got a duty. The government is supposed to do the right thing, the ethical thing. And letting those cases go forward was not that. And so they have to do an assessment. Now, there's a lot of cases, a lot of really irresponsible things happened over the past 4 years. And never before have I seen where I think an about face is necessary because of all the damage that was done. We've never had an instance when it was so bad. Nope, not done yet. You had a long time. So,
John, you can give running commentary in your mic if you want to.
Why did you remind him?
Oh, sorry.
And so you have to pause them and you have to look at them. And the SEC did that in a very organized way. Now, do we need some big, like, oh, the crypto unit, go get crypto? No, that was ridiculous. Of course we don't need that. So what did they do? They put it in with everything else and did it more properly, just like you should, and just like everything else is treated. And so I think, you know, the moves that the SEC has taken have been very responsible.
So John does have a point, though, doesn't he? That
Thank you.
hold your applause till the end because we're almost out of
No,
time.
no,
I'll get back to John here in a
a lot to
second.
say,
I
dude.
know you have a lot to say, but Teresa, just to close this out. So obviously the SEC did settle a lot of cases. I'm with you. A settlement's not a win, but they did have some wins.
A
in court.
lot of wins. Just
Okay,
read
hold
my
on,
testimony.
hold on.
There's
No,
dozens of them. Read them all.
There were
Winning on
motions
a
to
TRO
dismiss.
Dozens of
is
them.
not
Yeah,
a
there
win.
were-
That is not a win.
Hold on, John.
Opinions
I'll come back to you in a
where the
minute.
heads of enforcement were the
I'll come back to you in a
defense
minute.
counsel.
Does-
So let's not
Teresa,
make
does
it sound
the
like
SEC
it's
I
more
guess
industry.
what we define as a win is obviously very
All right, look,
different.
Nick.
Hold on,
You know,
John.
when
Hold on,
I
John.
say a
Hold on.
win, yeah.
Teresa, does the SEC have an obligation to see a case through? So where there was a preliminary win either on a TRO or a partial win on a motion to dismiss, does the SEC have an obligation to run that all the way through trial?
No.
Okay, John.
Okay, I agree with that. The SEC can pull back any case that they want to.
Okay.
But the question is whether they
We
should.
agree. Did everybody write
we're
that
done.
down?
Like I said, just read my testimony. You can read all these cases: Kraken, Coinbase, Telegram, Kick.
Are you excluding settlements?
Rivkin. What? No, none of those are settlements. They're all litigated. What's amazing is that you have these former directors of enforcement fighting these cases, writing tons and tons of motions. So you have hundreds and hundreds of pages of judicial decisions. I have pulled all the quotes for you. You can read them all. You can link to them.
They're preliminary, right?
they're
And I'm
oral.
sure they're
And
not
these are
cherry-picked at all.
No, they're not cherry-picked. They're Article 3 judges, okay? So that's what's supposed to happen. But the fourth industrial revolution, okay, the Trump meme coin, let's just take that one. 58 people, okay, it was started by President Trump. And again, I'm a Republican my entire life. I don't want to be up here being political. It traded immediately at around 75 or something a share. It gets down to whatever, like $8 a share. Then, I'm sorry, it's not a share. I'll debate you another time.
Yeah.
These people buying them are hoping they're going to go up. Okay, that's my view. You can disagree with me on that if you want. But 58 people made $1.1 billion on the Trump meme coin. 750,000 people lost money. Okay, yesterday a group of, I think it was called GD Company with 8 employees invested $300 million in the Trump meme coin. Welcome to the fourth industrial revolution.
Do you really think that this is only meme coins?
The point is, with respect to
Made
blockchain.
my
Okay, I've
point,
written
exactly.
extensively about blockchain. Let's just talk about this fourth industrial revolution in blockchain again. Read the concern.tech letter. You don't have to take the word for a bunch of lawyers. Read what go to concern.tech. Read what 2,000 technologists have said about blockchain. If blockchain went away tomorrow for all of you, nothing would change. This is a revolutionary technology. AI, the cloud. If blockchain were such an amazing technology, why isn't Google, Apple, Amazon, all of them, Oracle, the greatest software company on the planet, what are they doing with respect to blockchain? I've listened to every single one of their conference calls, every single one of their analyst calls, and they're not talking about blockchain. They might have some consulting going on. In LA, this is the craziest thing. In LA, it's a total marketing theater. They spent $47 million. They're going to somehow put your car ownership on a blockchain. It's the most ridiculous absurd. No blockchain project has ever succeeded along those lines. If it went away tomorrow, you wouldn't care. If crypto went away tomorrow, you wouldn't care. If the cloud did, if your iPhone did, if AI did, you would. That should be the test. I was chief of the Office of Internet Enforcement for 11 years. I was an internet evangelist. I traveled around the country, ask anyone. I set up the first terminal at the SEC that had internet access in the enforcement division. I believe in technology. This is all a bunch
Okay,
of hype.
Teresa,
Okay, gotta
response
say
quickly.
something quickly, yeah.
And then I want to move on.
So distributed ledger technology is not only so much more than memes, it's even more than blockchain. And so, I'm glad that you did the internet like 30 years ago, but it has moved on so far. And now, what you're talking about, did you know that in other countries, so for example, there are some countries in Africa where a tribe owns a piece of land as well as the government, and then a third party sells it. You know what blockchain does? They are able to use this to keep straight of like who the owner is. This is how this
Have
is
you
being
done a closing on a house
moved
lately? It all happens instantaneously.
Okay, I wanna-
It's all-
well,
that's
hello, and
crazy.
we're more than
And
the
by
United
way,
States.
I was
And
chief, I
if
was
we-
chief
if the
11
United
years ago, but I also
States-
ran
Can I finish?
the office of Strauss-Friedberg, the data breach response in DC
Very
for
good.
5 years. I'm in the middle of this.
So let me
every day.
change topics for a minute. We'll get away from the merits or lack of merits on blockchain technology as a whole, since the SEC is not supposed to be a merits regulator.
Right,
Where-
and that this is in the United States. And
Okay.
that we push this technology abroad. So yeah.
Very good. So let me pivot and ask the last question. We only have a few minutes left. The regulation around crypto for the last 6 years has been enforcement, regulation by enforcement. That is, the policy has been developed on a case-by-case basis. That appears to be changing. Teresa, I'll let you start.
We have 4 minutes. How about 2 minutes?
It's got to be. We'll be quick.
Okay.
Oh wait, no,
Where
I got a
sh-
rebuttal.
Where should the regulation of crypto be taking place? In the courts, rulemaking, staff pronouncements, Congress? Where should regulation of crypto take place?
That's a lot more than 2 minutes. But there are lots of different places that it can go forward. I mean, ultimately, you want it to be long-standing. So there should be congressional action. There can also be like some rulemaking. But every type of guidance and everything has a place, right? So initially, when you want to bring clarity and order to markets, you have to use something that is quicker, which is also easier to change and doesn't stay long enough. So that would be guidance, staff guidance, right? And then there's also the chairman has the authority to exercise whatever enforcement priorities or enforcement discretion he wants. So you exercise that discretion. And so each one has a place depending on where you are in the process. And just like if you look at the Shad-Johnson Accord of when the CFTC and the SEC came, they were sharing jurisdiction on something else, decades ago in the 2000-ish. They came up with an agreement among themselves, this accord, and then it was later codified by Congress. And so you can also do that, where this agreement doesn't have much force until it's actually codified. And so there's, a different place for each of these. And it depends who gets jurisdiction of what and where that goes. So, for example, the CFTC does not have regulatory jurisdiction over the spot market of commodities. They can only regulate, for enforcement for fraud and manipulation. So, but actually coming up with rules of this is how you register or this is what you have to do, they don't have that by statute. So that's something, if that's going to happen, that has to be by statute. The SEC, if it is going to operate on some, pulling in non-securities or something, then they would need the statutory authority for that because they're not, it's securities. If they would exclude something, their authority, their exemptive authority is so broad that they could really bring a lot of clarity quickly using that.
John, is regulation by enforcement dead, and is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think, well, in the case of the Howey test and everything else having to do with securities, if you read the Coinbase decision or the Kraken decision, the law is fine. It can always be better, like insider trading. We all know that it would be better if we had an insider trading statute, but that doesn't mean we throw away all the common law. So I would rather see Congress do it. And if Congress wants to allow for crypto to proliferate, then have at it. But the SEC was just following the law, which these Article 3 judges have said is the law. And, I don't understand all this. There is a killer application for crypto, and it's crime. We all know that. North Korea.
Oh my gosh, you can't not give me a rebuttal for this one.
North Korea stole $6 billion worth of crypto. That's the largest bank heist in history. Okay? Ransomware, child pornography, human sex trafficking. Every single one of those crimes has been exacerbated by crypto. I've taught at the FBI Academy. I've met with the FBI. All of these crimes.
Look at TRM's latest report, everybody. Just read TRM's report.
Did I interrupt you when you were talking?
Sorry, you did. Yeah.
So that's my view. You can, again, read the extensive use of crime that crypto has. If you want, elect your Congress people to allow this stuff to proliferate, okay? Because it's a great way to conceal and to commit money laundering. It's a very easy way to do it. That's why, but for Bitcoin, there would be no ransomware. And I'm a ransomware expert. I've done 10 ransomware conferences with Bruce, and I can tell you that, and we just had one, that but for Bitcoin, there would be no ransomware. And I was in North Carolina, where I teach at Duke, when there was an attack on the Colonial Pipeline, and you couldn't get home from the airport because there was no gas. So very quickly, these kinds of things can have an impact. Again, I could leave it to Congress, Or, I would do what the Coinbase judge, which is the SEC is just doing what they've done for centuries: prime banknotes, eel farms, ostrich farms, orange groves. When you look at the economic reality of the situation, you say it's a security, and you can't disappear the Article 3 judges that have said so. That's my last thing.
John, we're at time. Teresa, I'd like to give you an opportunity to rebut, but I think we've got to leave it there. So we'll continue this.
That was so not true.
Noted. We can continue this, but thank you both for an engaging panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.